Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Dee Dee. We are the hilarious outcome of opposing brains sharing a mutual desire to share knowledge and positive thinking about hemp and cannabis.
We are here to tear down the walls built by Big Pharma and other big companies that seek to keep the human race in fear and divided.
We are here to shatter the myths about hemp and cannabis and change the stigma of this amazing plant. Welcome to Hemp and Happiness with the Hemp Queen
And Emperor.
Podcast. Join us as we venture into this misunderstood and the unknown. Hey y'all, thank you so much for being with us and listening as always to our Crazy Antics podcast involving the fun world of hemp and cannabis. We have an awesome guest today. If you don't know who Dr. Amber Cann is, you should know who she is. Not only is she a very good friend of mine, and I have known you since, we've met in what?
A few years back.
Yeah, 2018, maybe 2019, maybe.
Oh,
It's been a while. It might have been
27. No, I'm going to say 2016. Or
okay.
So.
Yeah, it's been a while. If there's something about cannabis and hemp that I don't know about, she is one of my go-tos. Yeah. Okay. So I will bow to the other queen that's sitting in this room, y'all.
Shut up.
Oh, Matt's here too.
Yeah, Matt is here too.
That's right. We have to talk to him.
Guilty. But we so appreciate Amber being on today. And why don't you just give us a little bit of your background and what you specialize in? Because, most people don't know.
Right. Well, I'm a pharmacist by training. Mm-hmm. Been a pharmacist for 22 years. I've done a lot of different pharmacy things in my career. And just recently, over the years, I've worked a lot in substance abuse. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to move that a little closer. Okay. There you go. Over the years, I worked a lot in substance abuse and with patients in active addiction and active recovery. And so that's been one of my practice interests throughout my whole career. And of course, cannabis, alcohol, lots of different medications play into a patient's full picture of health and dishealth when you think about it. So the more I learned about cannabis, people using it really just recreationally, the more I got interested in the chemistry part of it. I'm a chemist at heart, and there wasn't a lot of research, as we know, good research, I'll say. But the more I was able to find, the more intrigued and fired up I was about how beneficial it could be for patients. So I just started educating myself and got incensed that new pharmacists that are being trained are not being trained on cannabis, because we do have patients who are using it both medically and recreationally, but most pharmacists have very, very little training on anything related to cannabis. The industry has just said, "Oh, it's illegal. It's a C1 drug. We're hands off. Our pharmacists don't touch that sort of thing." But now we know the tide has changed, and it's coming to Kentucky. It will be here, and I want to be on the forefront of bringing it responsibly and doing the right thing for our patients, but also doing the right thing for Kentucky.
So the really cool thing about you that maybe most people don't know.
Thing is there only one
there's
thing?
a few things, but I'm just gonna bring this back up. Besides knowing me and we're friends, but you, along with myself and 13 other people, were appointed to the Governor's Medical Cannabis Advisory Committee.
Yes.
Which is such a huge honor. I was pretty shocked when I got that phone call. I don't know about you, but...
Well, considering that I had just sent an email, kind of like you did, and I put my name out there to some people in certain circles, and I was kind of surprised too, but it was hours before I was presenting to the Kentucky Pharmacists Association on medical cannabis. So
go figure.
It was well timed that I got to announce it. I'm being the only pharmacist on the
I know, and I'm the only hemp person on.
That's right.
Isn't that pretty cool?
So, and we're both pretty badass boss ladies.
Agreed. I mean, and you can agree to that too, Matt.
I agree.
Oh, Matt's here.
Not only do I agree with that, I'd like to ask you both a question on the advisory board. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what that entails, what the end goal is, the steps in between. Walk the listeners through that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, first I'll say the reason that there is one is because Kentucky had a House bill that passed that languished in the Senate.
Correct.
And it basically was ready to go. It had really the votes to go through the Senate, and there were certain powers that be that decided to focus their attention elsewhere.
Yes, they did. As always, Kentucky's been trying to pass this bill and to get medical marijuana here for a while now. And Representative Nemes had put on House Bill 136, and it passed the House flying colors and was moved on to the Senate. And of course it got stalled again.
Yep. I was there in the gallery when it passed the House, and it was very moving.
Oh yeah.
Because there were patients in the gallery, and the wife of one of our fellow advisory team members was there. So I was so encouraged, and
a lot of us were
fired up.
A lot of us thought that it might. I'm going to be honest though. I did not think it would pass this year. And I had that feeling.
There were a few days left in the session.
Exactly. And the fact that, the Senate was trying to actually ban cannabinoids as well. They're going to pass medical, but ban cannabinoids, the Delta 8.
Right. So how does the advisory board lend to that?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So yes, the advisory board came about because the governor also was disappointed that it hadn't moved forward. And he was looking into a path to other ways, not maybe full legalization of medical programs, but just something to give relief to patients.
Yes.
So he created this advisory board.
No matter what anyone thinks about Governor Beshear, this is the first governor in the state of Kentucky that has actually been proactive on cannabis and trying to move Kentucky forward and get us caught up with the rest of the states that have programs.
And honestly, this is an issue that is very bipartisan in Kentucky.
Very bipartisan.
Few and far between.
Exactly. I mean, for the division in the United States and even in Kentucky, this cannabis is definitely bipartisan. Mm-hmm. But I think the main thing that, we had our first meeting last week, and one of the main things that we talked about, what the committee is set to do, what we are supposed to be doing, is listening to people, hearing why they're for it and why they're against it, and actually listening to their stories. So we are kind of keeping record of that. And whether or not, they're having town hall meetings as well. So far, there's been 3 scheduled. A new one was just scheduled, all in July, all over throughout the state. It was the central, west, and northern places. Mm-hmm. So it's super important. I think there's going to be one in the Eastern District too. Is that
the first one coming out is Pikeville? That's next week, actually, on the 6th.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. And then there's one that'll be in Frankfort on July 19th, and then one in Hopkinsville on July 25th, and that's one of the newer ones. So we're hoping that people come to these town halls and give us their stories as to why they want medical cannabis here.
Or why they don't.
Or why they don't.
Or why, if they're on the fence, maybe we can answer questions.
Oh, very true. Very true.
I mean, he put experts on this committee for a reason.
For a reason. And even the committee is very well
rounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like there's, we've got the few advocates. Mm-hmm. Then we've got a lot of doctors. We've got former attorneys, attorney generals. There is also Cookie. She has been in the correction side.
Yeah, she's commissioner of corrections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really a well-rounded advisory team. So I thought it was pretty interesting. And I think it's good that the governor is just trying to do something. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we can take this research back and these stories back to those specific legislators. At least this is my thought. And maybe change them and sway them and get medical passed here. Because it's needed. It's needed.
There is some division between the hemp industry and the cannabis industry.
There is.
Obviously, there's a revenue factor causing that division. Mm-hmm. And with the two of you, one being a pharmacist, one being a retailer, how do you see that working out in Kentucky?
Well, I see it working out really well, frankly, because if we go forward with what the House passed, which I hope they do, I think it has a very prominent role for pharmacists in that bill. And I like that, obviously, because I do think pharmacists need to be involved in this process. Cannabis and hemp have...
Why? Say why.
Why? Because...
Drug interactions.
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's drug interactions. There are so many drug interactions. And not just... affecting drugs that the patient may already be on, and then they add cannabis of any variety, but also on cannabis. And so a patient could be taking something that would need to necessitate a change in the dose of cannabis, either the THC component or the CBD component, to make it more safe and more effective for that patient.
Which makes sense.
So on that level, do you believe that a prescription should be required for someone to have access to cannabis?
Well, I don't think they're calling it a prescription, but...
For medical cannabis, if they're wanting to use it for medical reasons, I mean, it...
Yeah.
Especially if they're on other medications.
Right.
Well, I'm not talking medical. I'm talking cannabis in general.
Oh, I see. I'm more of a free love kind of person when it comes to recreational too. I mean, I think with guardrails in place for adults, that I think I'm okay with recreational use too. I mean, but I do think that pharmacists need to be educated, because people will ask. They need to be able to be safe to ask healthcare professionals.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So the bill as it stands, or the bill that passed, says that a pharmacist has to be a consultant for a dispensary, and a pharmacist is part of that process of the patient obtaining medical cannabis. So a patient would meet with a pharmacist after diagnosis, after getting the recommendation and visiting the dispensary. Before receiving any product, they would consult with a pharmacist, and then it would there would be an ongoing relationship with that pharmacist.
Now, obviously, in retail, who would bear that cost of the pharmacist? Would it be the dispensary, or would it be the patient?
The bill says that the pharmacist can't charge the patient more than $40. Now, of course, that could change, but I'm fine with that. I think that there's nothing in it that says that the pharmacist doesn't or can't connect or write a contract with the dispensary. So that's really where the monetary remuneration for a pharmacist would happen, is the relationship between dispensary and pharmacist.
Right. And my fear with that, not that I don't think you should be a part of it, because I do, but my fear with that is that will raise the cost for the dispensaries, and thus that cost will be handed back down to the patient. Granted, I know there's something in there that taxes are not going to be charged to the patient.
Correct.
But in order for the dispensary to be profitable, in order to have those products, because they're not cheap, that cost is going to go down to somebody.
I agree.
So there is that. But to answer Matt's earlier question, the reason there's a discord between hemp and cannabis is because, and you and I have briefly spoke about this on our drive to Frankfurt. We carpooled,
Yes,
saving gas. But we carpooled and talked about a few things. But one of the things that is up for the 2023 hemp farm bill, that you've got hemp people that are promoting completely changing the THC levels to a total THC, and not allowing Delta 8 or Delta 10 or other cannabinoids being sold at hemp dispensaries. And the reason being is because a lot of these same products, it's the same plant. We both know that. We all know that. But those products are being sold cheaper, and they're available through the hemp industry, and people are coming there instead of going to the marijuana dispensaries. So the marijuana dispensaries are losing money on those products. And of course they're saying it's because they're unsafe, they're extracted incorrectly, blah, 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 whatever the reason is. It all comes back down to money. Mm-hmm. So you have hemp and cannabis are kind of fighting against each other. And then hemp is also almost promoting that fact that they should be separated. So there's that issue there.
Yeah.
Well, there's the tax factor as well.
Yes. And the tax factor.
I mean, most states are charging 17%?
Oh, and some are even more than that.
Tax rate on cannabis, and hemp products are 0. So
extra.
Well, outside of your average state sales tax.
If your state has one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that gives hemp quite an advantage.
Huge advantage.
And I imagine that what leads to the rift. So how would the two of you propose to resolve that on the council?
let's just fix this right now.
We should.
Yeah.
Okay.
We hadn't prepared ahead of time. But
That's okay.
But I think this is simple enough to where we can solve. No, just kidding. No, it obviously is complex.
It is.
And I'm not on team hemp or marijuana or cannabis or
I'm pro cannabis, period.
I'm pro patient.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pro person.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's this is the point, right?
Yeah.
Because the division is ridiculous, but there's considerations that need to be considered and resolved before moving forward.
Right. But because they do also affect people.
They do.
The people who are growers, the people who are in the industry.
And here's the one thing. I truly do not believe that just because medical passes here in this state, that they should make the Delta 8 or the Delta 9 that comes from hemp or any of the other cannabinoids, make it only be bought at a dispensary. And the reason being is we have people that may not be able to get their medical marijuana license or may not be able to pay the fees to get that or to go into that dispensary and pay those fees when we have just as good products in our stores available through hemp.
I'll agree with that. And I'll say too that the Kentucky bill was very narrow in the allowed or the approved medical conditions that medical marijuana
Very
would be used
narrow.
for. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And
Yes, we do.
the conditions that were approved, I agree with. But
There was one that they really should add.
what do you think they should add?
Well, PTSD, you always have anxiety.
That's true.
I think the anxiety aspect should be added to it.
I thought
it was only PTSD and not anxiety.
I don't know. It was so broad that I kind of read it as that meaning. You're right. I don't know. I would have liked to have seen Parkinson's or. But
are you kidding? Yeah.
It did include spasticity, and it mentioned MS, but it didn't specifically say Parkinson's. So it's it's room for improvement.
Even Ohio is still adding conditions. I mean, and this is new for our state. So I just hope that there is a condition in the bill that says, as things come up, we'll be able to expand on that.
I think so too. Most states have.
Yes.
So
What about a hurt big toe?
I mean, yes, if cannabis is going to help you use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel about it. But again,
it's not on the list of medical conditions as of
Itchy
yet.
eyes.
Yeah.
I have all of these.
You have all
My
of them.
toe is killing me.
Yeah.
Gout.
I could use some cannabis.
I mean, you eat a lot of meat
with
and
the
drink a lot of
cheeses.
alcohol.
You know what?
Oh, yeah,
It
cheese.
could be
Damn.
out. Now I'll have you know. Never mind.
Okay, we're gonna.
I'm conservative on the drinking, but that's neither
Okay,
here nor
good.
there. This
'Cause
is
you know
not
it's
about me.
poison.
I'm more interested in this advisory
Alcohol's
board, and what really interests me is that line of medical versus recreational, how that's going to affect the hemp industry, how that's going to affect taxes, how that's going to affect retailers. There's a lot to think about.
There is.
And when I start to think about it late at night and all the things that I mean, even just like, outside of my pharmacist realm, but I start to think about, I hope we talk about that.
Yeah.
And I hope somebody's thinking about that. So,
Start making notes. Look, I mean, if I'm making notes,
Yeah.
I've just been making notes. So when we all come together, we can all talk about it.
well, just like we were talking before we started recording about training for dispensary employees. There are states who require it. There are states who do not. And I believe that Kentucky should, but
I do too. I mean, but some people's training is just from years of experience.
True,
you know what I mean?
And I don't. If
I
you're
educated myself.
of course, as
right?
did I.
Yeah.
For a lot. I didn't get cannabis training in pharmacy school.
Of course not.
But if you have someone coming in from another state who's been a bud tender or a dispensary person for a long time, okay, I count that as experience.
I do too.
And then we can, take a test or something. But training also adds costs. And so I'm sensitive to that as well. Again, I'm pro-patient. I'm in favor of us not killing people.
Correct.
People get annoyed when you kill them. So let's not do that.
You think?
How would you kill people, or are you just being sarcastic?
I'm being a bit facetious, but I'm just saying with drug interactions,
drug
there are,
interactions.
honestly, there are a few very, very concerning drug interactions with cannabis, and for warfarin, for instance, a blood thinner, certain seizure medications.
I won't even sell it to someone if they're on warfarin.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I know. I know this from my own experience. I've been on warfarin before. I know how horrible it is and everything it interacts with. I mean, you couldn't even hardly eat any green stuff. Like you had to limit that stuff too.
Right.
Do you know what warfarin was originally invented for?
Yes, I do.
I do.
Rat poison.
It was, yeah, rat poison. That's why I'm kind of thin on top with my hair, y'all. We ain't gonna go there. But yeah, it's some crazy stuff. I mean, I had blood clots growing up that were not my fault. But shit happens, right? We all have a crazy past and some of the things we had to take. But yeah, warfarin's one that I'm like, no, you got to talk to your doctor first.
So there's just really high alert kind of things that we pharmacists, we think about in our day to day of other medications.
Well, and we, even as we're hemp gurus and have been doing this a long time, we cannot give medical advice.
Right.
So when someone comes in, it's really on them. They should always check with their doctor if they can take these products, or a pharmacist. And I usually tell them, if you're on a lot of medications, you can check with your pharmacist.
Yep.
But again, I worry that some pharmacists don't know.
Yep. A growing number of pharmacists will have some basic knowledge.
Correct.
And unfortunately, I mean, there's not a lot of time in pharmacies that allow for pharmacists to do the research or to even look up something that they don't know. Right. It's such a manufacturing line these days.
Do you teach like CLEs? Like, I know that's a legal thing, continuing legal education, but do you do that kind of that same thing?
So yes, to the Kentucky Pharmacists Association, mine was a continuing education session for them. I wasn't sure what the pulse in the room would be for pharmacists on medical cannabis. I think some were completely disinterested because of the legal issue, or maybe they're close to retirement and it's not something they want to think about anyway, or they think they don't have patients who use cannabis, which I would say to that
one way or another. I bet
Walter
you money.
Dash.
Yeah, I bet you money they're using.
And that was my point. That's what I started the presentation with. So, but others were curious to start with, but fired up. Good. At the end of it. And then others definitely saw the possibility of working with dispensaries. There's nothing in the bill that says a pharmacist can't own a dispensary. The people who are making the determination that a patient qualifies cannot own a dispensary like a physician.
Right.
So I left that meeting very encouraged that a lot of the pharmacists, at least in that room, were open to the possibility of welcoming it into their practice.
I know I wanted to bring up too, one thing that Dr. Amber Cann and I talked about on that ride to Frankfurt was, I think it was on the way back actually. We talked about how, people, if they eat too many gummies and what the reactions are, and if they end up in the ER, what's a good thing that will help people with that?
Oh yes. CBD.
And what CBD isolate.
Right. Oh yeah. Right. CBD isolate, because it sort of competitively blocks THC from hitting its receptors, and sometimes it will bump it off. So yeah, that's a known remedy for people who are coming into the ED with the ER, the ER, emergency department, emergency room. That's right. They're coming. Yeah, ED has a whole other.
It does, especially in our realm. So that's why I had to correct you.
Yes. Yes, people will. You've probably talked about this on the podcast before, where people with edibles will take one and then it doesn't have an effect, and then they take another one and it doesn't have an effect. And I learned the term cookie casualty, which is one of my favorite cannabis terms. Where
cookie casualty,
where they've have you
talked about that? No, and I don't think we have talked about it really on the show.
Oh well, okay, So I mean, that's some states, especially in the medical realm, they require their gummies and edibles to be sort of a non-appealing gummy shape, but other states don't have that qualification. So you could buy a chocolate chip cookie that has supposedly a certain amount of cannabis in it, but who's to say that half of the cookie has half of the dose, right? So people will, maybe they'll start slow and take a fourth of a cookie, but who the hell eats a fourth of a chocolate chip cookie anyway? Yeah.
As my stomach growls and I'm thinking of lunch.
No kidding. So they just continue to, nothing happens within 15 minutes. And
it's that instant gratification, which we have talked about on this show. And edibles take time.
They do. And they're very, there's a lot of biochemistry that's complicated that that affects patients on how edibles are absorbed.
Correct.
So it could be your stomach acid level. It could be how fast your GI system moves in general. You could have other
metabolism.
Right. I mean, just if you've eaten or you've not eaten, what the content of your meal was that you ate.
Right. Because fatty meals.
Yep. CBD and THC are both what they call lipophilic. And so they need fatty stuff around them to be able to be absorbed. Yeah, so I mean, it's very unreliable, or at least it's unpredictable through the oral route. And so these people who take more and more, then it all starts sort of kicking in at once.
Yeah,
and it might.
Then it's too much.
And then it's too much. And despite their more knowledgeable friends' warnings of starting low and going slow and waiting for it, they needed that instant gratification. And then their first experience, perhaps, with
not so good.
is not great.
Right.
But yes, in emergency rooms, if they do come in with the untoward effects of THC, I don't want to say. It is an overdose. It's too much dose, but of course it's not a fatal condition. But
which is good. Yes. That's the one beautiful thing about cannabis.
Yes, and I can talk about why there's virtually no overdoses of THC. But if you like, I can drop some scientific knowledge bombs and brain chemistry.
We're going to have you back on the show for sure.
But yeah, so they'll administer CBD in the emergency room and supportive care, hydration and that sort of thing.
Of course.
But once the THC has been absorbed by the endocannabinoid system and the psychotropic chemicals have been released to the brain, CBD is not going to reverse that.
It doesn't reverse that reaction, but it actually attenuates it.
Right. It would prevent any more THC from being absorbed.
Not anymore. I mean, it's still probably coming to. I mean, it's coming. It's coming.
It would reduce the amount of THC.
Yes. The thought is that it would reduce and at least minimize an escalation at that point of untoward symptoms.
But once it's absorbed.
It's there.
Yeah.
And
that's something I've had to explain to customers before as well. Yeah. Like, it's not going to snap you right out.
It doesn't snap
it's
you
not
right
like
out.
Be on your merry way.
Yeah,
Go pick your kids up from school.
Yeah,
no, it's not the EpiPen in the TVs that they stab in your chest or anything. Right. Yeah. So, that's important to know, is that just because it took a while to get there, and it's also going to take a while to reverse.
But I mean, the average time is what, 4 to 6 hours?
Oh, that's reasonable. Yeah, but it could be up to 8 to 12 for some people.
True. That is true. I mean, depending on the metabolism aspect of it.
Well, that's what they've told me with other medications, and it's bullshit.
I mean,
but we're all different. We all metabolize.
We can pill my ass Viagra.
Well, isn't it telling that we can predict things like Viagra within 15 minutes? We can make a pill that works within 15 minutes of Viagra, but CBD and THC all over the place.
Yep. Yeah. Well, because we have a system for it. You know what I mean? So our bodies will use those cannabinoids for what our body wants to use it for, not for what we want to use it for. That's the one thing about that I have just honed it. I'm like, give it time to work, people. This isn't a pill. It takes time. Right. And especially with edibles, I'm like, please just go slow. No matter how many times we've said that, we'll have people come in. I took too much. You were right. I shouldn't have taken that much. I'm like, if you listen to me, that's why we're here. We're here to educate you.
Yeah. And it's not only, I think it's not just the slow to onset, but it's slow. Once there's an onset, it's slow to, build up too. And so that's another thing. Is people are just, they might even start to feel something but they think, oh, that's not enough.
Right. Oh, true.
So then they build on it as well.
Yeah, true. That is true.
So don't be a cookie casualty.
Cookie casualty. I love that.
The people who are trying to help you.
Yeah,
just like in any medication, you start low, you go slow.
Yep.
And pharmacists can help with finding that dose.
Correct.
Very educated people like you, Dee, can help
and
people find
Matt's
that.
Pretty
and
educated
Matt.
too.
Oh, Matt's here.
Yeah.
I don't know if my education. I'm more of a shoot from the hip, but
he is kind of a shoot from the hip.
That being said, and that actually brings I really just have one question that I'd like to ask. and that is with the lack of FDA-approved research for THC and cannabinoids in general, I really get confused on this whole prescribed cannabis when we're not even allowed to make medical claims about the shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, we have no idea what it does because no studies have been conducted. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, laugh in the background. Mm-hmm. But we're going to prescribe it now.
Yep.
With no studies published about anything. And by the way, you're not allowed to make any claims about anything that it does. Oh, but you can get a prescription for it.
Yeah.
Tell me how that shit makes sense.
So in the United States, there isn't, obviously, there's been a prohibition on actual rigorous research on cannabis
because
or cannabinoids.
Put in a Schedule 1 in the 70s.
That's right.
Because of Nixon,
Yeah.
which he was a crook, so I don't know why we still are listening to barbaric
Division.
laws.
Oh,
Division
we could do a whole
warning.
podcast
Yeah.
on
Continue.
that.
I know,
John
right.
Ehrlichman and
Yeah.
Henry Einzinger. Ugh,
Anyway.
it's terrible. But yeah, so but but research has been done in other countries. Israel is miles ahead. I mean, light years ahead on research on cannabis. So there are published studies. There is rigorous research. There are data to support.
But will the United States and the FDA accept those?
Well,
It's coming.
that's two different questions. So the FDA,
Federal Drug
Drug
Administration. So,
right?
I thought it was food and drug.
oh,
It's food. and
is
drug.
it food and drug? But it's a federal
A federal
is, but-
agency.
agency, correct?
Food and drug should never be put in the same sentence.
Yeah. So I think about the FDA as kind of like think about the people who certify hair dryers. Okay. You know, that UL symbol on it, you know, there are agencies who test these products and say, yep, they will not burn your house down. Right. And so companies sell those products because they don't want people's houses to burn down as a result of selling this hair dryer. So it behooves companies to find products that are safe, right? And it behooves the regulatory agency, the certifying agency, to do good testing to make sure that their reputation is intact, right?
Right.
Okay.
But that's still questionable too. I mean, these labs are all over the board on testing.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, but what I was going to say about the FDA is their motivation is to maintain their reputation of being, you know, the gateway to safe medications in this country, right?
Bullshit.
I mean, right?
Well, there has to be some regulatory.
Yes, there does.
There does.
Committee.
But for the FDA, there's no there's benefit to saying we need one more study, or this study that you've submitted to us that clicks all of the boxes. You didn't look at this type of patient, or we just thought we'd like to see one more. And so their onus is on public protection.
Well,
And less so on getting, medication that has been studied in other countries that we do have the data on.
And I obviously I'm pro, but I also have a problem with it being treated like a drug as well. And these manufacturers that are trying to get FDA approval as a drug, whatever their product may be as a drug, you can't patent a plant. Mm-hmm. And that really has been the whole issue. So when they are putting on these research things and they're taking this drug that they are now making out of cannabis, they are putting additives in it.
But still, that's the whole thing is, if by definition it's a drug, is there any drug on the market right now that is not FDA approved?
No.
Oh, there's lots of medications.
I mean, there's
We're talking about
that doctors are prescribing.
Sure.
That is not FDA approved?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
That's
fascinating
to
me.
They're not prescription products though.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're
so
more considered dietary
but actually,
supplements.
I'll take that back. So I was thinking dietary supplements because dietary supplements are not regulated by the FDA. They have that nice little warning label on there that says they haven't been evaluated. And doctors prescribe them to say, hey, you should go get, whatever supplement. And we don't have a lot of research. We have more research on hemp and cannabis, honestly, rigorous research than we do on a lot of that stuff that's on the Walmart shelf. But
other big box shelves.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, on the beep shelf.
Yeah.
But there are, to go further, is there are thousands of medications that are FDA approved that are prescribed for reasons that they're not approved for.
Correct.
And that's that's called off-label prescribing, and that's a legitimate practice.
That's what the ivermectin is.
Yeah.
That's why some of those doctors
and Dr. Molly actually spoke on off-label prescription during our previous podcast.
Correct.
So
okay, good.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah. So it can be used for good and for evil.
Correct.
Back to your question about the prescription. Yes, it's a C2 or C1 medication. And I think that medical professionals have been sort of careful not to call it a prescription in medical programs. So in a state that has a medical cannabis program, it's not that the prescriber or the cannabis clinician is writing a prescription in the traditional sense that they would write a prescription or now electronically send.
Smoke 2 joints and call me in the morning.
Right. I don't think they're writing that, but maybe they are, but it's not on a prescription pad. Like we hold that, pharmacists hold that sacrosanct, you know? Okay. So they're using different terminology. And it's more of a recommendation. I think, I don't know what the terminology of the land on is, but it's more of like the recommendation. And then they go with the recommendation and a plan for how often they'll be using something. And then they'll go to the dispensary, and the dispensary will have products that will have the milligram level that's been suggested by the prescriber.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'd actually never been walked through that before.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it all is. But the one thing that we wanted to definitely tell all you Kentuckian listeners, there is a website. It is medicalcannabis.ky.gov. Go to that if you cannot be at any of those town hall meetings, and voice your opinion, whether you're pro or you're against medical marijuana. And please, I know everybody wants recreational. I ain't stupid. We all know this. We all know it. But that is not what this is about. It is about medical cannabis coming to Kentucky. So voice your opinion on that. Again, medicalcannabis.ky.gov. Share your insights. We want to hear the stories. That's what we were appointed to. I've already had numerous callers call me. I've had numerous people on my Facebook reach out to me, and they're definitely for it. And at last count, I think the lady from the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet told me there was about 1,100 people that had, and wow. I think it was like 98% was pro. Yeah. So that's super important.
And
I mean,
2 of them were just like some sort of like prince that was offering to send them a lot of money. Oh, really? Through the form, I think. That's the other 2% were scammers.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me, of course, how do I get on it? How do I do that? And I'm like, I think they've made their decision as far as the committee members go.
It could be. I think, more committee members could be named as others roll off.
And I think the biggest way for others to help is to spread the word. Yep. Spread the word about the town hall meetings, spread the word about the website, and, just kind of keep pointing that stuff out to everybody.
And I will add, a major way that any Kentuckian can make their voice heard is make an appointment with your legislator.
Absolutely.
Write your legislator, show up in your legislator's office. I mean, do it respectfully.
Which we did. This is like in every episode. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yep. I mean, be your own advocate. Tell your stories by submitting your stories on this website.
Correct.
But if you can look your representative in the eyeballs and tell them your story, that is much more powerful.
Yep.
And if it is someone who is on the fence, that can be persuasive when they know that there are people that they are representing and people that are actual real people in human flesh that can be helped by their efforts. I think people can be moved by that.
Yes, correct.
Well, I feel very good knowing that you 2 are on the council, and I'm very excited to see how this pans out. And I'll just leave you with one more comment.
Okay.
Recreation is the best medicine. Okay.
Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
So think on that.
Okay.
Next council meeting.
Right. For sure.
Baby steps. Baby steps. Now, did I understand that I have a bet to solve?
Oh, you already did it. We talked
it?
about the CBD isolate.
Oh, yes. Oh,
We all
you
win.
did good.
We all win.
We all
did.
win that.
We all win
What
that
I wanted to circle back. Speaking of CBD isolates and about like prescriptionizing CBD or cannabinoids.
Right.
I think an interesting sort of possibility in the future might be that these companies start making isolates that have a particular cannabinoid, that have a particular terpene, that have, and these bespoke.
Ultra spectrum. Wait, what?
What?
Maria extracts available at 502.
There you go. Well, I mean, they do exist in some form, but I mean, I can see light bulbs going off in someone's head that.
However, it is so important, and you and I discussed this as well. Terpenes, they're in every single plant. Okay. Terpenes,
yes.
they're scents. If you don't have a true cannabis terpene, don't even bother with it.
Yeah. I mean, if it's just added to make it stinky.
Exactly. That's not the beneficial aspect of the cannabis terpene.
Right.
And that's the one thing that has irritated the living shit out of me about terpenes. Most people are like, oh, but you got to have that for the entourage effect. Well, I'm sorry, but there are not a whole hell of a lot of true cannabis terpenes on the market that are sold separately. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not cannabis terpenes. Don't be mixing that stuff. You're just mixing a freaking scent or a fragrance in with your isolate at this point in time.
And depending on where you're getting it, it might not be for ingestion use or
exactly
the vehicle that they use could be irritating. Well, don't get me started on that.
Exactly.
That's just maddening.
And some of the FDA approved flavorings and scents, you would be very interested to know what those actually are.
That's true. The beaver butt thing.
Oh, right.
Yes, we talked about that on another show.
We did.
Yeah, in one of my pharmacy
It's
settings.
Nutria, but go on.
Okay,
go on.
no, I prefer beaver butt. TM. As a pharmacy, or early in my career, as I was a pharmacist that did compounding, we did a lot of flavoring and things like that. So had to learn a lot about
grapey.
Yeah, we had to learn a lot about
purple. It's purple flavored.
What was it? Purple drink.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. We both appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely have you back on again, Dr. Amber.
Good.
And I'm thrilled when I saw that you were on there. I'm like, yes, they were smart, of course, for choosing both of us.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think we've got a really good team for this, and hopefully we can get medical passed here in Kentucky one way or another.
One way or another, even if we have to just walk people through the door and see it for themselves. We're going to do it.
Yep. And again, just reminding everybody, it is medicalcannabis.ky.gov.
Yes.
Get on there, learn and figure out when all the town hall meetings are and where they are. Show up, give us your story, tell us pros and cons, why you want it here, why you don't. And this again is about medical cannabis, not about recreation.
Right. You gotta start somewhere.
Exactly. So thank you again for being on. It's a true honor. We appreciate you and all that you do. And if anyone ever does have questions about the drug interactions, I have referred many of people to Dr. Amber Cann.
Yes, absolutely.
So she will help you with that. And she will actually look at all of your prescriptions and tell you that maybe you need to talk to your doctors because they don't always talk together about what meds they're putting you on. And sometimes you need that expert advice from someone who actually studies drugs.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
A thing or two.
Exactly.
You know what your new nickname is, right?
Oh, no, I don't.
Dr. Amber Cannabis.
Cannabis. I know it's perfect, right? I mean,
it is perfect. It's even spelt right.
It is even spelled right.
Goodness gracious.
I know. It just begs for a domain name.
Yes, it does. Oh, you better get that quick.
I know. I need to start thinking now.
Well, thank you again. We appreciate you as always.
Well, I appreciate your expertise, and I always look to you for so much about.
Oh, well, thank you.
Cannabis, and I look forward to working with you too because I want to learn more about the industry side and the production side too. So,
well, that'll be on one of our topics as we're driving and saving gas and carpooling.
That's right.
I love that. Thank you.
Exactly.
All right.
Thanks, Happy Hempsters, for listening to us. I know this ran a little bit long, but we appreciate you as always. And, keep it hempy out there. And don't forget, Don't forget, be your own best advocate. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Hempin' Happiness with the Hemp Queen
and Emperor.
Keep your mind ever open and expanding. Like, subscribe, review, follow us, all the good stuff. And
keep it hempy out there.